Cheers everyone, Warmick here. Happy to say that we finally reached 1000 subscribers. And, like I said in that Q&A announcement video, once we get here, I'll have a Q&A. You sent me lots of questions and I've been really excited to make this video for a while, so let's go to answering them. Also, just as a side note, I'll try to pronounce the names of the people who gave me these questions, but I might mispronounce them. It's not on purpose, sorry for that, I'm really trying, but I'm not just that good at it. Alright, so the first question, or rather questions, come from Roman Blendov, and he asks, what is my favorite map in the whole SpellForce series? That would be the Westguard, because I feel like it's one of the more interactive maps, you can build your own settlement. I have lots of favorite maps, but for my favorite, definitely the Westguard. What aspects of the lore I don't like? Well, there's obviously things I don't like about the lore with the games that have the lore wrong, like Faith and Destiny, Demons of the Past and SpellForce 3, but if you want to know something about the Phenomic games that I kinda don't like, is that the lore is missing a certain amount of depth. I know that games during that time didn't have as much depth when it came to their lore, but if I had the ability to kinda change it, I would expand upon a few things, just a little bit. What other games I play? I play a lot of Metal Gear. I was actually thinking of playing the older Metal Gear games. I play Stronghold, the Stronghold games, especially the older ones as well. I play The Witcher and generally a lot of RPGs, and for the one kind of competitive game I play, League of Legends. That's kind of like the main games I always gravitate to besides SpellForce. Don't I find that the lore of Warcraft: The Frozen Throne is very similar to Breath of Winter? There are some similarities for sure. I feel the thing you're speaking about in particular is the whole sword thing, where Arthas in Warcraft 3 gets Frostmourne to save his people, but then he becomes corrupted by the spirit of the Lich King in there, and in Breath of Winter, the Shadow Warrior takes a Shadow Blade, but then turns into a shadow as kind of the price he has to pay. It is similar, although I feel like as a general trope, when it came to video games and fantasy, was this cursed weapon, cursed sword thing at the time. It was popular, so I don't think it's something that SpellForce copied from Warcraft 3, but just something that that was generally a thing in a lot of books and a lot of video games at the time. David Basili asks, if there is another game I would recommend to a person who is a fan of SpellForce 1, but doesn't like SpellForce 2 and 3, which game would that be? It depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for the atmosphere of SpellForce 1, I would recommend the Gothic games. I feel like Gothic 1 and Gothic 2 have a really cool atmosphere that's similar to SpellForce 1 in certain ways, although it's not really the same type of game. If you're looking for an RTS RPG mix, obviously Warcraft 3. I'm also a fan of that game. Just don't get the new Reforged version, just get the old one if you can. And maybe even Warlord's Battlecry, if you've never heard of that game. Warlord's Battlecry 3 in particular is also pretty good. Or the Stronghold games, if you are looking for something like that's more pure RTS. Those are the games that come to mind. I feel like all of them are really fun, and just look up some YouTube videos on them, see if you like how they play, and if you do, wait for a sale, get them. You won't regret it. Guts the 100 Men Slayer says, or asks me rather, what my favorite music piece in the SpellForce series is. Difficult question, I have to admit, and I had to think long about this. I came to the conclusion that my favorite piece is the Lullaby of Death from Dragonstorm. I will have it play in the background while I answer this question, and while I do have a lot of songs that I like, I feel like the scores and the music in the SpellForce series was always good. The Lullaby of Death is probably, for a few reasons, my favorite one, also because of the significance, because it's the last Phenomic game and things like that. Robinator asks in German, which SpellForce part is my favorite and why, and what race is my favorite? The race one is easy. It would have to be either the Dwarves or the Dark Elves, because probably the Dwarves, because of the certain principles they have. They're hardworking, and they're just kind of like that about the race. I know it's kind of stereotypical that the Dwarves are like that, but it's something I like. With the Dark Elves as well, the Drakon with the Codex, the Way of the Warrior and everything, how they follow that, and how they even honor Neathalf, despite them being a dark race. I feel like that's a really cool element of them. But yeah, Darks or Dark Elves. Darks, Dwarves, I mean. And which SpellForce part is my favorite? Difficult. Also difficult to answer. Obviously, it'll be one of the Phenomic parts, because I don't really like the other SpellForce games. But which one? all of them have their own charm, in my opinion. Some do certain things better than others, but I would have to go with The Order of Dawn, just because The Order of Dawn was the first game, and it started the whole thing. It doesn't do all the things the best, but it just, because of the fact that it was the first one, I would have to pick The Order of Dawn. Pavo Motal and Geologa Stein ask a similar question. What's my top go-to skill combination in SpellForce 1, and which is the most fun to use? It's not the same, actually. My go-to skill set combination would be heavy combat arts with some type of magic, usually white magic, or maybe black magic, or fire or ice, something that makes you a really good solo character, even in the early stages of the game. And if you want to kick back and just relax the game without micromanaging too much, that would be what I would go for. The most fun to use, on the other hand, would be a combination of ice and fire elemental magic, and probably black magic. Because once you get to the later stages in Shadow of the Phoenix and onwards, it's just really fun to use that build. You can wipe out armies by yourself. It's overpowered, but that's one of the reasons why it's really fun. Alright, so szczęśliwe komunikacje lądowe.
Szczęśliwe komunikacje lądowe.
Would like to know, which character's death do I think was the saddest? I just feel like there's one answer to this, Urias in Shadow of the Phoenix. I liked Urias as a character. I feel like the death, even though I'm not against the death happening, I think it serves a good purpose in the game. Although, yeah, it's kind of sad that it had to happen, because he basically sacrifices himself to save Alia, and that whole thing. It's not the saddest death in video gaming history ever, but I feel like as far as SpellForce goes, would have to be Urias. JC Dannon asks 2 questions. What city in SpellForce 1 do I like the most, and what I think about the idea of a SpellForce 1 remaster. Would it be reasonable, or should the gem stay as it is? For the city first, Empiria in SpellForce 1. I feel like Empiria, out of all the SpellForce 1 cities, is the city that actually feels the most like a city, if that makes sense. The main reason is because it has all those districts, all those quarters in it. It gives all of them a distinct feel, what people are there, how they're dressing and everything. Like, you have the poor district in front of the city and stuff like that. I just feel like it's the most city-like and alive city in SpellForce 1. And what I think about the idea of a SpellForce 1 remaster, yeah, I think it would be reasonable, and I think that's definitely what should be happening with the SpellForce series, because a good SpellForce 1 remaster is the only thing to really revitalize the series, in my opinion. The SpellForce 3 games didn't really do that. I know I've been vocal about not liking the SpellForce 3 games, and you might like them, which is fine, but the fact is that just they didn't really bring that many new fans to the series. Some, for sure, but because of the issues those games had, we've lost a lot more. So a good SpellForce 1 remaster would be the way to go, in my opinion. It would be reasonable, but it needs to be done well. Which I don't think that Grimlore can do. Which is, I'll touch on that a bit more in another question, but yeah, it can be done. That being said, I do think the current version of SpellForce 1 should stay as it is, so that people have the option to both play the old one, if they want to, or the new one. I know I would probably be doing both for, different reasons, so yeah, that's my opinion on that. A question from Arinus1 that I found really interesting. Is there any way of helping the modding community of SpellForce 1? Sure. The best way is just to create mods yourself, or just to support the current modders. If you want to create something yourself, anything, really, just go on our Discord server. We have a special channel for SpellForce 1 modding. Just go there, talk to the people, see what they're doing, see maybe you can help them with their things, see what's possible. You can make new models, you can retexture, you can create quests for the game and stuff like that. There's a lot of things you can do for SpellForce 1. It's not the easiest game to mod for, but there are tools, and you can do something with these tools. It's not that difficult. So yeah, if you want to help the modding community, that's the best way to do it. Not just for SpellForce 1, but for any game really. Just create mods for it. Ova said, what I think, he's asking me what I think the best kind of magic, black, white or mind is, and if there's a chance to retouch the broken pieces of the world. For magic, depends. If it's in-game, probably black. I like black magic the most. I think it's very fun to use. I think the summoning spells are nice with the undead and later the blades and everything. If I had to pick for real life though, I would use white magic, because I feel like healing and being able to heal wounds and illnesses and stuff like that is just overpowered in real life. So for the game black, for real life white. Mind is kinda just there. I don't think it's particularly good at any of those things. It's not useless, but yeah. And is there a chance to reattach the broken pieces of the world? I think there is. You need to consider that in SpellForce, the portal network was fueled by the Archfire, connected through the Circle Mages. They were kind of like this vessel between the Archfire and the portals. With them gone, the portals started losing power, but it's not impossible to create a new vessel, and I'm pretty sure Phenomic wanted to go in that direction, because in Dragonstorm, when you talk to Craig towards the end of the game, he mentions that Professor Twiddle would actually have a way of reattaching the broken pieces of the world somehow. They sadly didn't really get to exploring that idea further, but I do think it's possible, and who knows, maybe someday we see that happen, if it's done well. Neox asked me a question in my DMs, which was...
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Yeah, I know. That's how I've been feeling since 2012. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. It'll... Anyhow, moving on. Haganization asks if I have an opinion on using Raid's Kadar as a stranger in SpellForce 3 Fallen God when he was allegedly spotted confused and lost somewhere in Northander after striking that deal with Saddest. And do I think the Shaikan could be the next race to be explored in the future expansion of SpellForce 3? Now, as far as SpellForce 3 goes, I've been vocal on this channel about that I don't like the story there because of all the lore breaks. I'm not saying everything about that story is bad, some things are, but the lore breaks were flat out unnecessary, and it's just something that I will never get over, because it was just... I don't want to start going on a rant here, but just that's the main idea why I don't like SpellForce 3. I don't like the gameplay of it, but that's subjective. The thing is that just the story, the lore is all over the place there and doesn't make sense. It's not consistent. So, as far as SpellForce 3 goes, if I isolate SpellForce 3 and don't consider the older games, I think it can make sense, because Fallen God does take place a lot of years after SpellForce 3. Soul Harvest, I think it was. So, yeah, it could happen, although it's not really explained that well. Who knows? Who knows? I think they had the idea. The whole Saddest Death thing doesn't give me good vibes, so it's not something I think about too often. And if I think the Shaikan could be the next race, I think the Shaikan are interesting. I like them as a race. Do I want them as the next SpellForce 3 race? No. Generally stemming from the fact that I don't want another SpellForce 3 expansion, because I just don't feel... Because I'm scared that there's gonna be more lore breaks. There's always... They've been there. I don't trust that Grimlore can do a good job with that, and I don't think that they can depict the Shaikan as the race they should be. They don't understand them well enough for that. I mean, in SpellForce 3 base, you had an achievement for killing the dragon in that game, which was called Shaikan, even though the Shaikan don't kill dragons, they protect them and have close bonds with them. So I'm not hopeful that they could do a good job of that. Not at all. Johnny LG wants to know, if I was the one with the power to decide where the path that this game would take in the future, what changes and which direction would I make, or what direction would I take for it? Like I said, SpellForce 1 Remaster, for sure. I think that's the best thing, the best option to not only bring in new fans with more modernized gameplay, although keep in mind, not changing it from what SpellForce 1 is, just modernizing a lot of things, but also to bring in a lot of the older fans. That would definitely be what I would do with the game. Also, a lot of out-of-game content, like a lore guide, a lore book, a lot of short stories like we used to have back in the day, and more fan interaction. I think that's really missing from SpellForce 3 as well. There's not much, if anything, of those. So that's what I would do. Remaster SpellForce 1 and put a lot of out-of-game content, like a newer interactive world map, lore guide, and things like that out. Just to have more things to bring new people in and to make them interested in the world of SpellForce. And last but not least, Jinx2666 wants to know my thoughts on if there was some kind of total HD edition of all the SpellForce games, except Faith in Destiny and Demons of the Past, with consistent lore. Which engine and gameplay type would I want to see and why? SpellForce 1, SpellForce 2, or SpellForce 3? Now, first of all, Jinx, you say consistent, right? But then you mention the consistent lore, but then you mention SpellForce 3. Doesn't really work, but I get your point. You were more referring to the gameplay here. If I had the choice, I would just keep the gameplay as it is. So SpellForce 1 gameplay 2 SpellForce 1, and SpellForce 2 gameplay 2 SpellForce 2. If I had to choose, probably SpellForce 1 gameplay, because more people like that type of gameplay. But in the best case scenario, I would just leave the gameplay in those games as it is for them. Maybe change a few things here and there to make it a bit more modern, but because people like that type of gameplay, they've grown to like this type of gameplay, and they associate this type of gameplay with the games, and I don't think SpellForce 2 would work nearly as well with SpellForce 1 gameplay. I might be wrong, I've never played it with SpellForce 1 gameplay, but it's just something that everything has been made around this type of gameplay, right? So just changing it would not only be a lot of work, I also feel it would be unnecessary to some extent. As for game engine, the SpellForce 1 and 2 game engines are too old. I would use the Unreal Engine. Now, if you're wondering why not the SpellForce 3 engine, the SpellForce 3 engine is a really bad engine. It's very limited in a lot of ways, so Unreal Engine 4 would be my choice of engine for something like that, if it was to be attempted. And yeah, those are all the questions you guys had for me. Again, thanks for everyone who asked them, and thanks for everyone who supports this channel and who helped it get to 1,000 subscribers. It might not seem like much compared to a lot of other channels, but for me it's a really big thing, and it's a big step in trying to rebuild the community to, how it used to be, which is the ultimate goal of this channel. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye.